Hello everyone, it's Shel from Paper Rock TO Studio. Today I'm sharing with you an experiment that I did uh, a week ago or a couple weeks ago when I did the ATC for the challenge, at Pick a Stick challenge for the ATC challenge. I had to use embossing powder, and I opened this drawer that I never opened that has a bunch of embossing powder. Like, I had no idea how much embossing powder I actually own. I never use it. Some of these have never been opened. I've mentioned before that I was a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for over 10 years, and I collected a lot of stuff. You can see these are all Stampin' Up! Embossing powders. And yeah, I had fun with what I figured out how to do with it, which was to use some versamark re-inker as a paint and then paint in areas and then color it with the embossing powder. So I decided to have an experiment today, seeing if there was ways that I could add embossing powder to my mixed media projects. And I definitely think that there is. This project is all just embossing powder, but I'm sure that after doing this that I can use it in a lot other ways than this, adding it into other projects in my plethora of layers when I do stuff with mixed media. So I'm not going to get rid of all these, even though that was my first inclination, was to just, I don't know, sell them or give them away or something. But I decided to keep them. I hoard everything anyway. So basically what I'm doing is I have a paintbrush and a tag. I've got 1,000 of these tags. I'm not even lying, I have 1,000 because I ordered a package of 1,000. Okay, maybe there's 990 left, I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. So I am using my paintbrush and the re-inker from the Versamark to paint areas of my tag and then adding different colors of embossing powder. I know a lot of you people out there have the same hoarding situation as me. You probably have several different colors of embossing powder, and so I'm making this video for you so that you can get out that old embossing powder that you have and do something else with it. Do something different with it other than just, stamping and then embossing the stamping that you did, which is the way that I used it before. I've never even tried this before, but this is actually kind of fun. My only complaint is that you have to put the embossing powder back in each time. And I started out with that tidy tray, but you know what? I've always hated that thing because it's full of static and all the embossing powder just sticks to it. So I only did a few colors with the tidy tray, and then I just put that aside and decided to just use a piece of deli paper instead, which works a lot better. Stupid tidy trays, and those things probably work pretty good for beads and things, but for embossing powder, everything just sticks to it and it's just annoying. So I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to get rid of the static off of it, but I am painting certain areas, adding the powder. I can go over the top of the other powder and add highlights and shadows just like you would if you were painting. Here I'm using a ball stylus and just dipping it into the re-inker and tapping it on there to make, this is like a field, and I'm going to make some poppies in it. This is a spring tag about blooming things in the spring, and I lived in California in the high desert for a while, and there was just fields and fields and fields of poppies, orange poppies. So that's kind of what I was going for there. And I have 3 different colors of blue, so I'm going to try to make kind of an ombre sky, starting with the lightest color. So what Stampin' Up! Did was they had these color collections. I don't know if they still do. They probably still do, but at the time that I was a demonstrator, there was 4 sets of 12. And at one point, they sold embossing powder in those sets. So the light blue would be from the pastel set, and then I have a blue from the bright set, and then I have another blue from the Regals. So I end up with 3 different colors of blue. Actually, I have 4 because I have another one that's called denim, and I don't even know where that one came from. But it's a Stampin' Up! One too, so yeah. So my idea was to try to, on this, when I put this second color, I want that seam gone. I want the colors to blend together. But when I put the light blue over the darker blue, it flew off when I used the heat tool. I don't have one of those smaller white heat it tools from Ranger, and they have a lot less force. You know, the air doesn't come flying out of them, where this one does. So those would probably work better, but I did figure out how to solve the problem eventually. Once I applied my brain power to it. This was early in the morning, and so I wasn't thinking very sharply. So I just keep adding lighter blue to the darker blue and darker blue to the lighter blue with my little scoop and trying to get that to blend in. And then I add my darkest color at the top. And this is the denim. I didn't end up using the navy blue color because this one was slightly lighter than the other one. I know there's still lots of places to buy embossing powder out there. You don't have to get it from Stampin' Up! I don't even know if Stampin' Up! Still has this, but I wanted to use what I have. I need to stop getting new things and use the old things. So that's what I ended up doing once I figured it out, was to heat it from the back instead of letting that forceful air blow over the top and blow the powder that I'd put on off. I just heated it from the back, and then I was able to make this kind of ombre looking blue sky. So then I'm back to my brush again in the Versamark Re-Inker ink. An option for this, if you don't have the Versamark Re-Inker, is to just use glycerin. And I do have a bottle of glycerin. I used to make my own refills for the blender pins, so I know the glycerin's around somewhere, but I was just too lazy to find it. So I just used the Re-Inker. And then in some cases I use the actual pad too, but that would definitely work. Glycerin would definitely work for this, to just paint it on, you know, because it has that same sticky feeling to it. And you get that at a drugstore, pharmacy type place. It's not very expensive. I'm actually not sure what it's used for when you're not doing art. I really have no idea. I just know you get it at the pharmacy. So I continue to paint my little tree. This is a tree. You know, I like trees. I do a lot of trees. It's slightly hard to see what I'm painting. Right now I've got it close to my face. That's the reason that you couldn't see it. It was off the screen. And the reason that I had it close to my face is because I was trying to see where I had put that. The Versamark Re-Inker is shiny, but of course all these layers of embossing powder are also shiny. So you have to look for the shinier thing on the shiny thing. But it worked out. I got some branches with my dark brown. And then I thought that I was going to use a stamp to put on the leaves. It's this little teardrop stamp. But when I tried it a little bit, and it kept sliding because of the plasticized feeling of the embossing powder. It was just sliding. It was sliding all over the place. And it was a little bit too big. So I just kind of used a dry brush to reduce the size of some of those little splotches. Heated them up. Then the other thing that I am using that I think is helping a lot is this powder pal thing. It's called an embossing buddy, and it's just full of powder. I don't know what kind of powder it is, but it comes through the canvas, and then it like when you touch stuff with your fingers have your own natural skin oils on there, and sometimes papers will pick up those oils, and then when you're trying to emboss, you're getting embossing powder where you don't want it. And that's what that tool is for, is to remove static and oils from your skin from paper before you emboss it. But in this case, I'm actually using it over the top of the other embossing powder to make sure that I put it only in places that I want, which is what I'm doing now with the brush. I'm now adding the leaves just with the brush. And that works out fine. And then when I decide that I want some highlights on my leaves with the lighter green that I have, I just use that ball stylus again and just do little dots, little tiny dots. And then I get some little highlights, pieces that are smaller than the splotches I made with the brush. So there will be close-ups at the end of the video where you can really see what this looks like. It is very interesting looking. It's different than any other medium that you might do this with. It reminds me of this kit that I had a long time ago that was for making sand paintings. And I think someone got it for me as a gift, and it had all these fine colored sands in it, and then it had some boards and some type of a medium that was a glue, and you painted in the glue in a certain area and put that color of sand on it. So it ended up being a whole sand painting. Kind of cool. And this reminds me of how it looks. It's kind of, it's completely smooth, but looks like it has texture. And you'll see when the close-ups come in. So the final thing I did after I was done, I put on some little cherry blossoms onto my tree. And then this is it's basically the Stampin' Up! Equivalent of ultra thick embossing enamel. That was the thing. There was this lady named Suze Weinberg, and she did all kinds of stuff with this thick, chunky embossing powder, and it basically will just make a clear coat, as if I had put an acrylic pour over the top of this. And it starts to make it look a little bit like encaustic painting. Encaustic is when you use melted wax, and the look of this, by the time I put all this other embossing powder over the top and heated it to make it all smooth, looks quite a bit like encaustic. It's a very, very old art form. Got it stuck to my deli paper, but that's fine. So it's kind of shiny, and it looks like it had, like if you touched it, you could feel like a sandy texture, kind of. So then, of course, I'm going to back it. I decided on pink because it is supposed to be a spring tag, and it has those little floral bits in the tree that are pink. And then my fibers are also going to be pink, light blue, and sage colors, those more springy floral colors. If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment so I know that you were here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share if you want to. You can pin it on Pinterest or share on Facebook, whatever you want to do. All those things help out my channel a lot by YouTube thinking that I'm making something valuable, and then they recommend it to other people who might be looking at something similar. So please do that if you can. To finish off, I'm just putting on my fibers, and then I've got the gold cord that I'm tying them on with. I'm going to trim them, and that'll be it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.